Hello, everyone. I'm Shelley Ursig. I'm the product manager for process management and process automation on the Salesforce platform. Today, I want to talk with you about how Process Builder can help developers. And actually, we're going to talk about all of our automation tools. So welcome. Thanks for joining us here today. I have with me also my esteemed colleague and the co-mastermind of Process Builder, Miguel Canizares. When you have those gnarly bulkification questions and tricky use cases at the end of the thing, just aim the questions right towards him. So, bigger brain than me. All right. So I am going to talk about the roadmap, and I'm going to do a sneak preview into some functionality that's coming soon. So our standard warning, please make your purchasing decisions based on what's already in the app. OK. So I just want to do a quick overview of what tools we have for automation, the declarative tools. And then we know you're developers. So I want to talk about why we think these declarative tools can help you to go a little faster and to maybe focus on some more interesting pieces of solving problems. Okay, so we'll look at a simple use case where often people write triggers, creating records, and see how quickly you can do that in Process Builder. We will also take a look at Process Builder plus flow and plus code and how that can expand the power that you have both declaratively and for your admin users who are point and click and want to do customization to respond to the business process, but then need to be able to kick off some complex processing that you've set up or functionality that's just not in the declarative tools. Okay. And then we'll do a quick peek on features and the pilots that we have coming in summer 16. They're very exciting. And take a look at the roadmap. So let's do a quick overview just of our tools. So the two main declarative process automation tools we have, Process Builder, gives you sort of a multiple if-then statements that kick off a bunch of powerful actions. So let you do work across relationships, across records, and it gives you really a canvas so that you can see the process, share it, and collaborate across organizations or between IT and business or business analysts. Visual Workflow. How many people have used Visual Workflow or Flow? Cool. All right. So as you know, Visual Workflow, more powerful than Process Builder, right? It's the engine that actually powers Process Builder. Process Builder is a UI that exposes a simplified sort of slice of functionality of what's in Visual Workflow. So if you need more power and you need things that Process Builder can't do, you can go right to the Flow Designer and still have a declarative tool to do what essentially can be visual programming. Looping, working through collections, doing call-outs, and critically doing screen-based flows. And the screen-based flows you can do in Process Builder, as you know, have logic behind them. So they take input from users, and they operate on that input and return information to that user based on the input that was given. Very, very powerful. Now, combined, we think these tools are starting to build a solution for you that when you combine them with code, start to get very, very efficient. So I just want to talk about why you might want to use declarative tools, even though you're a developer and you can code. All right, this is a pretty good laundry list, but really, it comes down to the ability to go faster, segment your functionality, segment your features, give the admins or the people who are closer to the business process the ability to make those small tweaks and changes and not to come to you each time. I'm going to show you an example of that. So if you encapsulate the criteria in the process, the stuff that's really close to the business, and let them adjust that, they're not running to you every single time and saying, hey, please update this code. Now we added a new territory. We added a new step in our process. They can do that themselves. And you can focus on writing the more interesting and challenging sort of pieces of the problem. Right? I want to highlight, too, that Process Builder kicks off, and Flow as well, kicks off invocable actions. Invocable actions are a great way to encapsulate the logic on the platform, power of the platform, and to be able to reuse it across multiple processes, multiple flows, and even via the API. So lots of power there. Okay, so let's just talk about one example where frequently before we had Process Builder, the only real way to create a record on the platform when something happened was to write an Apex trigger, right? And some people are still writing triggers, and there's lots of good reasons to still write them, but what we've seen is that it's actually a lot faster if you can do that utility type Apex in something like Process Builder. And what I want to do is actually just take a look at this example here. So we have an example where we have an account, and what we want to have for our process is that anytime the account type is an installation partner, wow, there we go, okay. I wish I could blame that on the wireless, I don't know. So anytime the account type is a partner, an installation partner, we want to create a placeholder case. That's our process, right? So that, because it's going to hold some information about when we're doing installations and things. And we want that to happen automatically. Now, normally you just write a trigger, right? So here you can just write a process. It's very, 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 very fast. And so you can say, well, I can write the trigger pretty fast too. I just want to point out that when your business owner or your business analyst or the person who's invested in this process comes to you and says, well, that's great, thanks for doing that, but actually only the ones in California. Okay, so now I just add a row and I pick the criteria. And it's, only the ones in California, or only the ones that are worth N amount of dollars, or, oops, there we go. I think we're all on the same wireless. This is really slow. Okay. So only account name, Bob. Pick any criteria, and I can just change that right here. So let's say only ones where the billing country, we'll say the billing country, go away, open twice, equals, wow. Okay, here we go. Rolling. There we go. The billing country equals US. Okay, we'll just make it very simple. But the idea is that I did that, I hit save, and then when that saves, I hit activate, and now the process is already updated, right? So you can extrapolate from there that any small change you can allow the business user to make, or even you to make here without touching code, is going to save you time and let you focus on things that are a little higher value, right? So let's take a look at a slightly more robust process, right? Opportunity management. Let me go back to view all my processes, just to give you an idea of what the tool can do. So the value here, and as you can see, we all like versions. The value here, and you'll see in this process, is that you can encapsulate in one process a bunch of functionality that you have to take on a single object. And we have something new coming out in summer 16. If you haven't seen this before, probably not. You might notice that this looks a little different. This is what you expect from Process Builder, right? An opportunity gets created, and there's a criteria that says if the stage is prospecting, go to the right and create a follow-up task. And then 6 days from now, schedule an action that does a chatter post to the owner to remind them to follow up on that opportunity. And then you stop. So this is how Process Builder's been working for the last couple of releases. Well, now in summer 16, you notice that actually what we want to happen is that we want this to say, okay, well, that's great. If it's prospecting, do no more. But if it's closed won, do these actions and then evaluate the next criteria. Closed lost, it's not going to be closed lost. But either one of these might be a high value amount opportunity, and we need to notify sales VPs if we win or we lose one of those high value opportunities. So going to the next criteria allows us to do that. there's a new switch here. This is actually active, and you can tell the process either stop at that row or evaluate the next row. So this is going to add... Great. Some of you have been waiting for this, I know. It's going to add a lot more power, right? And it's going to deliver more on the promise that we made, which was we're trying to give you the tools to put all of your functionality on your object in a single process. So that's the goal there. So just to say, you can do fairly robust things here. You can create records, tasks, chatter posts. When you do chatter posts, you can use merge fields and reference the values that are in the records or in the related records. So very, very powerful declaratively. Oops. Okay. Now, what happens when you need more power? So there's some things the Process Builder can't do, and that's by design, right? We're trying to keep it very, very simple and segregated. So when Process Builder can't do everything, you can launch a flow. Now, with flow, it's a lot like visual programming, right? There's a lot more you can do. You can loop through collections of records. You can have things wait and wake up. So we have a scenario now where we say, okay, whenever a contract is created, we want to throw out a reminder 30 days before that contract expires. Do a chatter post, okay? So I can do that very easily with the flow. There's the whole flow right there. Fairly simple, right? Let's go back to the demo here. There we go. Okay, so here's the flow. So it looks up the contract, it waits, and you can configure this wait for a certain time period. And if you can look here, you'll see that the time period is 30 days prior to the contract expiration. If there's a fault, it's going to shout to a screen. And then it's going to post a chatter that the renewal is approaching when it hits that date, right? So how do we work with that? We simply create this, and in this case, the Process Builder just becomes the trigger for the flow, right? Whenever a contract is created, and my setting right now is just fire on update. And then my declarative user can just choose the flow called contract wait. And all they have to do is map one variable, which is pretty obvious. Now, again, there's an opportunity for the user to intervene here, the button-click admin user to intervene here and to potentially change things. And you don't have to do that. So that's one way to connect to flow. Now, the other way that you can extend process is Apex methods, right? So Apex methods, you can do call-outs, and essentially it's your get-out-of-jail-free card. Do whatever you want. Right? We've got a nice example here where they recently released the ability to lock and unlock a record. And I know you guys were doing funky workarounds using approvals to lock a record. Well, there's a very, very small Apex class that you can connect to and have those records locked. And in this case, go back to this. Actually, processes, my lock account process. Okay, so now I'm calling an Apex class, right? And again, I'm just mapping the record IDs. That's all the point-and-click user has to do, or you. It's just really fast. And again, an opportunity to say, okay, I can put criteria here that says when do you want to lock a record and which record do you want to lock. Now that lock record utility can be used on any record, so it's reusable. Right? The action becomes very, very reusable, and then again, the business analyst or the business user can come in here and say, well, actually, it's the account rating is hot, and X, Y, Z, whatever criteria, go ahead and just add that in themselves without bringing you back in. So the goal here was just to point out that there are a lot of extension points that make the declarative tools a lot more powerful. We're trying to put as much power as we can into the declarative tools so that you can go faster, but then still connect to the customization that you need, and we'll continue to do that. We have a couple new pilot programs. Actually, they're with Flow. Very, very exciting, because Flow combined with Lightning, I want to tell you about them, and they are going to be open in summer 16. So if you're interested in those, you can talk to your representative. The first one is the Flow Runtime REST API. So running a flow through the REST API is going to allow you to do all the customization you can't do now. You can do multiple columns, you can do styling, you can make the screens interactive, dynamic, all via the API. So we're running that right now. The next pilot is very, very powerful as well. It's a way to combine Lightning, to combine the power of Lightning and the customization that you have in your Lightning screens in the app, and bring in logic and bring in screen flows. So you're really then taking the functionality that potentially, like for example, on an opportunity that the sales rep needs, and handing it to them right where they're working. So there's a flow component now that's right here in the standard components. And then what you can do is drag that flow component onto the canvas and select the flow that you want to run in the canvas. And I'm going to show you what that looks like and how that actually works. And we had it up. Oh, there it is. Voila. OK. All right. So here's our opportunity. It's in the stage of needs analysis. And you'll see in the right corner here, we've got a deal support request. That's actually a flow running right here in the opportunity. And I'm going to say I need a proof of concept demo and an architect review. And I hit next. And in the background, this is doing notifications to the architects and to the people who are working on all these different support pieces and creating tasks for them. Now, if I refresh, you'll see that the flow also moves the opportunity along to the next stage. So it's no longer in needs analysis, and it's actually moved all the way up to proposal and quote. So once those materials are posted back, then we can continue to move on with the opportunity. So this is a way that we're really working across the platform with Lightning to bring the tasks, the features, the functionality that users need to do their job right to the place where they're trying to do their job, and free them up to have more of the important conversations, have more time for those conversations, and keep a record of what they need right in one place, like a dashboard, if you will. OK, so if any one of you are interested in the pilot, please contact your representative. We're going to be turning that on as soon as you have Summer 16 in your org or in your sandbox. And we're happy to have everyone start playing with it and give us feedback around that. OK, so now I want to talk about the roadmap. And we'll leave a bunch of time for questions at the end. We have a really, really ambitious process automation roadmap. We're very excited about it. We're making good progress on it, and I think we've got a lot of momentum. Happy for you to take the pictures. Please don't tweet them. We'll post the slides, but we're not allowed to post the roadmap slide. So there are sort of 4 core areas that we're working on in process automation to move the tools forward. The first one is expanded logic, right? So we've just made some progress there with Process Builder and being able to go to do the switch and go to evaluate the next line, evaluate more than one true criteria in a process. So that's expanded. We're going to take a look at how we're going to expand that further in the future. Right now, we're going to leave that sort of there, and we're going to move on to some other features. We're working on right now the ability for a process to trigger a process. So right now, you can kick off a flow. You can kick off Apex. but you can't kick off another process. So we're going to enable that. And what that's going to let you do is then sort of chain your processes and control the order of those processes. So give you a lot more control about how your automation is working in your organization. Then we're going to be working on a lot of new flow features for the enterprise kind of service cloud type use cases, things like longer running processes, being able to do parallel path functionality, to have approvals integrated, to be able to map approvals that are going down parallel paths and then come back together, to be able to hand off records. All of those broader, kind of more enterprise scale use cases we're going to be working on in Flow, and it's part of our logic bucket. I'll kind of circle back at the end and tell you what we're working on kind of next, because this is a lot. So the next big pillar is the eventing system. So right now, in order to kick off any automation on the platform, you've got to create a record or update a record. Right? So we're building an infrastructure now that will let you define what you want to build to kick off that process. And we call that events. So right now, we've got a sort of POC around something we call custom events. It's the ability for someone outside the Salesforce org to send a REST call, send us a JSON payload to our event service. I think if some of you are here listening to Jay, he probably talked about the event service a little bit. That can then trigger the process. And that payload can be used and can be incorporated inside the process. So for example, you've got a proprietary database, something happens there that's important to you. Let's say, it's a hotel database, and you've got new features in that hotel. You pass that event to our REST endpoint. We take that and we say, okay, the Marriott San Francisco now has a new pool. That kicks off a process that updates all the campaign records inside your Salesforce org. With the new pool, it's immediate integration with what's going on outside of your Salesforce org, bringing that into the Salesforce org. There are actually a whole bunch of other things that that's going to enable, and I'll talk about those in a little more detail after this. Okay. The next big feature we're working on, and we're working on this right now, is more dynamic UI for flow screens. So the ability to have the screen respond to the user input without hitting next, so just on-screen responsiveness, the ability to do custom layout, to do styling, all the things you can do via the REST API. We're working on the ability to do those using the Flow Designer, so to configure those declaratively. And we are aiming for a pilot in the next release. That's our very ambitious goal. So the final section is about management and bringing the builders together. So we have a vision for giving you one place to get a view of all of your processes across the org, sort of a process dashboard. And that would mean a per-object view of all the triggers and workflows and flows and processes that you have on each object, right? That kind of a view. An entry point into debugging, an overview into which processes aren't working or having errors. For approvals, what are the state of those errors? When we get to longer running processes, the ability to see where those processes are at and to resume them. So our UX team is actually doing research on this right now, customer research, and if anyone is interested in participating in that, we definitely welcome your feedback and want to hear what you need. I think that's something that we'll start working on iteratively, where we'll release it iteratively. We'll come out with, the sort of first pass at the obvious things in terms of a dashboard, but we really want to hear about what you're looking for, what would be helpful for you to manage the automation in your org, and also in terms of troubleshooting and what your process is. How you go about that would be very helpful. So let me know, feel free to tweet or email. Okay, last thing, builders. So we are working very hard on trying to figure out how to make the flow building experience better. We would like to basically have a single entry point for you to come to one process tool to start at Process Builder, and then if you need more functionality to be able to do something like hit an advanced view, and then you would be in a what would essentially be the flow builder, but a more modern flow builder. Right? So we're working on designs and architecture around that, but we haven't started that process yet. It's a tough problem, but we definitely have a goal and a vision for bringing this all together so that you have one place to go. And if you build your process and realize, oh, I need more flow features, either you can just open that in flow, or you'll just have an easy path to the additional functionality that's in flow. Try to make this more of a seamless process. Okay, so now I just want to do like a quick deep dive. So dynamic screens. As a user inputs information, the screen would then be responsive and show subsequent information that was relevant based on that selection. So the idea is, you know, you've got a printer, and you're being asked what's your brand, and then following that would be, you know, the list of, if you've chosen HP, the list of HP models, and it would all respond based on the selections that were made at each point. And you wouldn't have to hit next, and all the information would be there, as well as being able to be styled and having multiple layouts. So we're working really hard on this right now, and we're aiming to pilot this at the end of the subsequent release. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this event service I mentioned earlier. So right now, you need a data change, right, to kick off any sort of process that will trigger actions. Now, the event infrastructure is going to let us do all sorts of operations that will kick off events, including things like approvals or chatter posts or logins or emails, deletes, connecting to Thunder IoT Cloud, those kinds of events, events coming from SAP or from your proprietary databases, and then ultimately be able to schedule processes, schedule flows, just like you would a cron job. So this event infrastructure that we're making really good progress on is really going to open up a lot. Our first sort of exposure of this will be something called custom events, and you'll start hearing about that. We'll have a pilot for that where you can send us a REST call for something that's happening in your organization that's not happening in your Salesforce org that's critical for your business process. And we'll let you send us that REST call, and we'll use that to trigger processes. So that'll be the first way we expose it, but then we'll continue on all these types of events, and you can imagine that there will be things like lightning events. Lightning components can trigger processes, right? Navigation events. It really opens things wide up. And the goal really here is to say that we know that you know, your whole world doesn't exist in Salesforce necessarily, right? And there are very important things going on in your business outside of Salesforce. We want to have a way to connect those important events to the work that you're doing in Salesforce. And along with that, we want to be able to sort of talk back. And we have an interesting example here. We're now connected to the Thunder IoT Cloud. And so we like to use this example where the Thunder IoT Cloud is this giant ear that's also a funnel, and it's listening to all sorts of messages from all sorts of machines, including giant printer plotters that engineers need. And so it might get a message from that equipment, you know, every 10 minutes. Well, we don't want to get that message every 10 minutes. We only want to get the message when we want to do something about it. So what Thunder does, it's the big ear. It's listening and processing, you know, millions and millions of events. It's got a rules engine that says, hey, if the printer is low on ink, I want to do something about that. If I get a status where the printer is low on ink, let's do something about that. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to pass that to Process Builder, right? Process Builder gets that and says, okay, great, I got this event. It's a low on ink event. And what do? I create an ink order. I write a chatter post to the rep. I might create a task For a follow-up item, that gives the representative an opportunity to call the business back and say, hey, we heard you're low on ink. No problem. The order's on the way. And by the way, notice this month you're running out of ink sooner than you did last month. Is your business growing? It's an opportunity for engagement. And then finally, we have this new action called the Thunder response action, where we actually do a call back to Thunder's API right from the process builder and send them information. Hey, we got this event. Ink orders have been filed. All this work has been done. And then Thunder is really keeping all that customer context in one place. So that way, this is a way that you can connect to doing work in Salesforce and keeping all the context, all the social context that Thunder keeps, all together in one place. And it's an illustration of how we're moving to a way that process in Salesforce, while not orchestrating outside sort of systems, is connecting to outside systems and inbound in taking messages from outside systems in, and then also calling out and returning information back out to those outside systems. So really trying to make a full circle there. Okay, and lastly, I just want to put this up here. So this is, just literally a first idea of what a process home might look like. Again, we're really looking for feedback, and user research is holding groups where they're garnering feedback and listening to you, how you work, how do you wrestle with things now, and what would you like this to look like in terms of being able to manage all the automation across your org. Okay, that's a lot. Questions? Yes? Yeah.
They don't query, they don't consume your DMLs. Right. Process builder actually consume your software.
Right. The reason is that with workflow rules, one, they sort of cheat, but two, they don't. Oh yeah. So the question was about query limits and hitting query limits with processes and flows. I just want to say a moment about the difference between those tools, right? So with workflow rules, you're only updating the record, right? And you're not traversing. So with Process Builder or with Flow, you can traverse across any related record. Though that traversal is querying, right? So it actually queries more in order to give you the power to operate on all these different related records, right? So that's part of what's happening. And I'll let Miguel speak to the rest about what you do about it. Yeah, so we are living under Apex limits and don't own them. We have, just so you know, we have optimized Process Builder and Flow as much as we possibly can. And we're talking to people across the platform about the fact that people are still hitting these limits and looking at what we can do. I don't know if there's another mic.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see what we can do. So you're talking to the choir, for sure. We want that. We would like limits to be a little bit higher than that, and we would like you to give you the ability to do a lot more things. As Shelley pointed out, workflow rules are limited in what they can do. So we need, at the end of the day, to protect the service. You shouldn't be able to update 100,000 records because you're going to you may affect the use and the experience of other orgs, right? So at the end, that's the reason for governor limits. We're doing what we can in order to get a better experience and better limits than that, a better way of tracking that.
Yes.
So right now, if you're going through a workflow rule, there is no need to refresh the page. Now, in what we showed for Flexi Pages, and when we talk about Flexi Pages, that's a declarative exposure. We're planning on doing programmatic exposure as well. But at the end of the day, if you modify something in the background, the page should just listen to those changes by itself. This is a pilot. We'll get there. It's in the roadmap. That's something that we're planning on doing. It's just another event that the page needs to listen to. The infrastructure is there. We just didn't get there yet. And the page reflects all the changes that you have done via that button. In some cases, if you're going through workflow rules, yes. If you're going through the existence of a button within a screen, the answer would be no. The infrastructure is there. We literally have not gotten there yet.
Okay. Yep.
Will we be moving to HTML5 away from Flash?
We will be moving away from Flash. Let's put that way.
Thank you.
Yes. we will absolutely be moving away from Flash when we rebuild the designer. Yeah. Let me get this side of the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, we were working with invocable action and found that the output has to be tied to an S object, and we would like it to tie to a collection, S object collection. Will that be something that's changing soon?
I don't know about soon, but it's on the list.
We don't actually own it, but we are very aware of their backlog.
Should we be counting on their?
You can,
Do it.
yes.
Ideas change.
Pound.
You want something to happen, ideas change. We look at that all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. People really do look at that. That's an invocable actions framework thing. There's a lot more features we need around invocable actions, and that's one of them. So, happy to cheer you on making noise about that. Go ahead.
You mentioned about having the ability to control the order of processes.
Yes.
How can we do that?
Okay, so the feature that we're building now will let you take a process and just like you were calling a flow, kicking off a flow or Apex, kick off another process. And it'll be another process type, right, because it won't have its own trigger, but that will let you string processes together, right? Because process 1 can kick off process 2, and that can kick off process 3, and that way you can control the order. We don't have a way to give you control over the order. There is a platform effort to look at how we can give more control to developers around like trigger orders and workflow, all that stuff. But this is the one thing we can control, so we figured that we'll be able to give some value by letting you at least control the process order, and hopefully that'll help make things more efficient for you. That doesn't necessarily resolve the bulkification issue. No, sorry. Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to add on to her question.
Sure.
So whenever that gets deployed, this enhancement, would we be able to have like a primary process, and then what we have today, then order that, put that in order and take off based on
Meaning convert what you have today into that?
yeah, I think it'd be like sort of backward.
Oh, like retro. I don't think so, because I think we have to configure that differently. Yeah, you want to answer that? Are we?
No. So if you refer by being able to convert workflow rules into processes,
No.
no.
Processes today, and then with what's coming.
You would need to recreate the process as a different type. We do not have, or I don't know, I mean, that's something we could think about, but not currently in our backlog to do that automatic conversion. So basically, if you were to say, I have a process and account, and that creates a case, and I have a trigger on case as well, you would be able to call that on case directly, which it would happen that way anyway. So you're in a way controlling order there. But no, you would need to save. Probably the easiest way that we can do for you is a save as that allows you to change type. And that seems like fairly low-hanging fruit, to be honest, and that would solve your problem. That guy, his hand is about to fall off.
You guys give any thoughts to being able to hand off the process to like asynchronous process
Yes.
architect things around not doing things synchronously, either putting things into batches, putting them off asynchronously. Is that
Yes. Yeah, that is definitely roadmap. It's far out roadmap because it's not entirely under our control, but there's a lot of things that we want to be able to do async, where you just don't need to be in the save transaction. And it kind of goes back to, it's a way of approaching the whole limits thing as well, right? So someone goes to a trade show and has 50,000 leads. They just want to dump that in and have that done by next, have all the stuff run by next Monday. It doesn't have to be run immediately, right? So having some of that stuff, or notifications asynchronous. So we're in conversations about that, but we don't actually sort of control that. At a certain point, we will start pushing on that, though, if it doesn't gain its own momentum. But I think there is some momentum on that already, because there are other parts of the platform that need that. Yeah, back in the corner.
Yeah, have you folks sort of looked at the whole body of programmatic automation with Apex and sort of, put together an idea, a roadmap of your own where, by this date we're going to have 80% of the use cases covered in non-programmatic flow tools? And if so, when is that?
We don't have something that defined, but we do have targeted use cases to go after, and our the priority order of the features and functionality that we're building aims at that. We don't necessarily ever going to get to one-to-one parity, but we.
When do you think you'll be at 80%?
Yeah, that's hard to say, because we're gonna focus based on kind of user and not just features, but usability and use case. So, for example, right now we're gonna shift some focus and go for like the large enterprise service cloud service use cases, where there's interaction between an agent potentially and a customer, and then you're doing work in the background, and you've got to pop up different screens and functionality there, maybe having approvals running through, kind of more sophisticated processes. We're going to put energy there. That will of course move that needle along, but that's how we're approaching it more from the business need perspective. So we want to move the declarative cliff, so to say, as far as we can. With things like Process Builder, we want to make sure that we don't make so many features in there that it becomes more complicated, because I think the simplicity seems to be working for people, the straightforwardness, but then we have flow to put all the rest of that functionality in. So I don't have a great answer for your question. It just, we're coming at it more from a business angle. Yeah. Yes?
You guys, like you said, have done a lot of work to bulkify a lot of the transactions with Process Builder and Flow.
Yeah.
Is there any documentation around what actually happens with those records and how, like, what bulkified means in the context of a flow and a fast
Yeah.
action or something?
There's a couple of blog posts. There's a little bit of documentation, and the hard thing is we can't tell you exactly. Like, you can't give me your scenario and say, well, how many records can I process, right? Because it depends on the relationships you're traversing and the nature of those relationships as to how many queries that generates. But we do have some documentation around that, and maybe I can post that. I'm sure there's going to be some chatter group for this, and I'll try to post that afterwards. Miguel may have more to say on that.
So just keep in mind that everything that Process Builder does is built on top of the platform. So, and the same is true for Flow. We are subject to the same limitations. We use SOQL. SOQL is batch, right? So if you're trying to update 2,000 records, that is going to be done in batches, and that is going to count as different operations as towards your limits. So that's the complexity with calculating those limits. Same goes for queries. Any CRUD operation is going to be subject to that. And then there are more obscure limitations, like a query can only have 20,000 characters. That's the way we actually bulkify queries. If you have a long criteria, that may be a couple of queries. So anyway, I think we need to wrap up. There is a process session this afternoon at 3 o'clock. There is going to be a bunch of us over there, probably more time for questions. So by all means, if you have more questions, stop by over there and we'll be happy to answer them.
It'll be more hands-on as well. And do give us your feedback. I know this is our first time just focusing on developers. We kept it still pretty high level, just talking about the touch points. The workshops today and tomorrow are going to get, hands-on, dirty in some code. But do let us know, what kinds of sessions will be helpful for you in the future that can help us also, target things for Dreamforce as well. Thank you very much.